Welcome to the Alberta Update. We are back, a first-hand look at what's happening in your province and with your government. Of course, we've been away for the summer months, but we're going to do our best to get you up to speed on everything that the government is up to. The legislature set to reconvene. We'll talk about that, of course. We have a lot to cover in this episode. We'll talk about the teacher strike with the Education and Childcare Minister, Dimitrios Nicolaitis, the new license plate for Albertans with Service Alberta, and Red Tape Reduction Minister Dale Nally. Some great economic news and job numbers reports to bring your way. But first, we're going to welcome in the Premier to chat about what's going on currently and all you've been up to in the summer months. Good day, Premier Smith.
Hi, Bruce.
Hey, Premier, if you'd indulge me during this interview, I know normally we talk for a few minutes. I'd like to take a little more time because there's a lot to talk about what's going on currently and also what you've been up to over the summer months. You okay with that?
You bet.
Let's start with the issue I think everybody is talking about. That is the teachers' strike, and I think most everybody would agree with our appreciation and great feelings toward our teachers. But in a labor dispute, they are represented, of course, by the Alberta Teachers Association. And there is some confusion as to whether they're on the same page with their members. Can you bring us up to speed on what the province has offered and sort of where we are at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all want to be able to make sure all of our frontline workers are treated fairly. That was our intention going into all of our labor negotiations. And as a result, we've ended up with more than 50% of our collective bargaining agreements having been settled at a rate that we're seeing pretty consistently across the country. So it's about 3% per year for the next 4 years. And then we do what we call market adjustments. And so you make some adjustments to the pay grid just to make sure that workers at different levels of experience are getting paid fairly relative to their counterparts. And so we thought we had a fair deal, put it on the table. It was rejected. So we came back to the table, added a few more elements that we heard from Teachers Mattered, accelerating that grid adjustment, pledging to hire 3,000 more teachers, pledging to hire 1,500 education assistants. We thought it was a better deal, and it was rejected by an even larger majority. So I think what we've asked the teachers union is to really dig in and find out what it is that their members are looking for us to do, and see if we can come back to a deal that not only treats them fairly, but also treats taxpayers fairly. There isn't an unlimited amount that we can spend on any of our areas of government responsibility when we have a $6.5 billion deficit. So that's the context that we're operating in, and I'm really hopeful that they'll come back to the table for a bargained agreement.
Complexity in the classroom, no doubt, a huge issue because of class sizes, of course. For perspective, Premier, I want to talk about immigration and the number of kids that have arrived in Alberta to classrooms in the last few years. How many have moved here in the last few years, and what is the government doing to address that in terms of new school builds, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, post-COVID, I don't think any one of us in any province expected that the federal government was going to take all restrictions off all of the different immigration streams. So we went from having about 300,000 people a year coming into Canada to, in the last few years, it's been closer to 2 million people a year. And as a result, all of our services have become increasingly stretched. And education is a prime example. So we went for many years with either flat or sometimes declining enrollment. And then in the last 3 years, 450,000 people have moved to Alberta, and the net new students coming into the school system has been about 80,000. So you can imagine, as part of the reason why we decided we needed to respond to that in 3 ways: build more schools. And that's why we're offering teachers more pay, because we know we need a fair settlement, more teachers as well as more education assistants. But you can't materialize those school spaces overnight. We know it's going to take a few years for us to be able to get them all in place. But there's no question that the massive influx of new students over the last 3 years has really stretched the system to a point where it's creating a lot of complexity in the classroom. I mean, when you look at newcomers coming here from a country that might not speak English, that's one issue. If they're coming from a war-torn area, now you're dealing with potential trauma. If they don't have the same education system as we do, you might be dealing with developmental delays. And so there's way more complexity in the classroom as a result in the last few years. And so we need to respond to each of those. But the best way to respond to it is to get a fair deal with the teachers, and then let's work through how we're going to address those issues of complexity.
Yep, precisely. Premier, your Education Minister, Demetrius Nicolaitis, will be joining us here on the Alberta Update in a few minutes, and we'll talk more about this. We'll dive into some of those things you just discussed. So much else I want to ask you about, though. Prime Minister Mark Carney and potential pipelines for Alberta, in particular to the West Coast, so we can get our product to other markets, diversify our customer base. The Prime Minister has not addressed any of the 9 things that you asked him to, including the tanker ban, clean electricity, etc. He said all the right things to this point, but hasn't. What happens if he and the federal Liberals don't budge? What then?
Well, I can tell you he has partially addressed one of the 9 bad laws. One of the bad laws that we knew would be impossible to implement in January of 2026 was the net zero vehicle regulations. They initially had it that we were supposed to start buying 20% of all vehicles had to be zero emissions or hybrid. And we don't even produce that many cars in Canada. So at least there was a pause on that policy, a delay of the implementation, and I hope they ultimately scrap it altogether. The Prime Minister also, when he came in, he did talk about, he did immediately remove the carbon tax. So we know that he has the ability to identify issues that are problematic, implemented badly, causing impacts maybe that were unintended, and reverse course. But you're very right, Bruce. To this point, we haven't seen any significant changes in the laws that we need to see to improve our investment climate. We need to see an end to the emissions cap. We need to see an end to net zero power regulations by 2035. We need to make sure that our businesses are able to talk about their emissions reduction successes rather than being accused of greenwashing and face criminal penalties, and on and on. So there's a reason I identified those 9 bad laws. If we want the private sector to have confidence again to start reinvesting, not only in Canada, but certainly in Alberta, we have to address those laws. And haven't seen movement yet, but we're still hopeful.
Okay. Well, maybe it's a hypothetical, but what happens if he doesn't? And is there a drop dead date on this? And maybe roll into that your thoughts on Premier Eby and his objection to what we're trying to do with a pipeline to the west.
What I've been working towards is, I know that the Prime Minister wants to put a new batch of projects on this major projects list of projects in the national interest by Grey Cup, which is November the 16th. So that's what we've been working towards, is having some kind of memorandum of understanding where we address the 9 bad laws and we see a commitment from the federal government for a bitumen pipeline to the West Coast, which is the best opportunity to open up new markets, as well as the Pathways Project, which would work to decarbonize the product going into the pipeline. So that's the grand bargain that we're working on. And as I say, we're working towards a Grey Cup deadline, and we'll have to do this again, and I'll tell you whether or not our hope has been dashed or whether or not we've made some progress. We're still in the middle of trying to hammer out some final details. It's looking pretty good, but I've said that before. I want to make sure that we have a firm agreement on the path forward before dancing a jig.
Yeah, no, my fingers are crossed like that of many Albertans for sure. Listen, you had a very busy summer. One of the things that you did was you traveled around Alberta and you talked about Alberta's relationship with Ottawa, and you wanted to get some feedback from Albertans on the pressure points that we have, what their recommendations are in dealing with them. I know you'll be releasing details of that tour and what your findings were at some point, but can you, in general, tell us what Albertans told you?
Well, let me connect it to the last conversation, because it didn't really matter whether you came from the perspective of we need to keep more tax dollars here because you care about the taxpayer side of it, or we need more dollars here because you care about having more dollars to pay for social services. The solution is the same. We're looking across the country and we're seeing every single government in dire financial straits. When we see the upcoming budget at the federal level, everyone's talking about it being a $100 billion deficit, largest we've ever had. Every single province is facing deficit. Even us this year, $6.5 billion is what we're anticipating for a deficit. Even Quebec, which receives a $13 billion transfer for equalization, is also running an $11 billion deficit. So what that is telling me is that we have so constricted our economy and our wealth creators that it's impacting our ability to pay for the programs that people care about. So if we had all 3 of the pipelines built that were well underway, Energy East, Keystone, and Northern Gateway, we'd be producing 2.5 million barrels of oil a day more. which would be about $55 billion of GDP, of which the governments get about 40% of that, and we'd have money to pay for our social programs, and the federal government would have money to pay for its priorities as well. So I think we have to make sure that we get the federal government focused on the right things, get out of our lane so that we can develop our resources, which is in line with our Constitution. And then on top of that, start pushing them back in other areas that should be provincial jurisdiction. I'd already mentioned immigration. We heard loud and clear that more people want us to take over more control over our immigration system, to realign it the way it used to be in the past with more reasonable numbers and a focus on economic migrants, as well as looking at some of the policies that have been bandied about, quite frankly, for 2 decades on the pension, on collection of personal income tax, on policing. Trying to get a renegotiation around equalization so that it treats the big provinces fairly on an equal per capita basis. We got a lot of great feedback on that. We're working with the panel to digest what they heard, and we'll have some recommendations before the end of the year about what the path forward would be. But some of those ideas are going to be put to a referendum of the people.
Well, we look forward to the report or whatever we release on those recommendations. I'd like to ask you one more question, and I guess it's about the upcoming session of the legislature,
Mm-hmm.
the speech from the throne on the 23rd. No doubt you'll be focusing on affordability for Albertans, among other things. Can you give us a sneak peek of what we might expect?
When I came in after the election, that's when you normally put a throne speech forward, because then it maps out what your agenda is as a government. And we've ticked a lot of boxes over the last 2 years, and so we have to now start fresh again with a new mandate based on some of the issues that have emerged in the last couple of years. So what you'll see with the speech is that it goes through a catalog of our accomplishments and also identifies the things that we're going to continue working on as we move forward over the next 2 years, as well as some new initiatives. But we hear from Albertans the same issues. They want to make sure that we've got low taxes because that allows them to be able to address issues of affordability. They want us to fix the healthcare system, make sure that it's there for people when they need it. And they want us to, as well, make sure that we're addressing issues of public safety and mental health and addiction. And we've got some new initiatives around both of those. And there'll be a few more things in there. But I think one of the value propositions Alberta has is that we are such a strong and robust economy with entrepreneurs and innovators. And that's why so many people have wanted to move here, as they see that there's a real opportunity. It is a more affordable place. You can actually buy a house. You can aspirationally make sure that have the next generation do better than the one before, which is I think what every parent wants. And we want to make sure that we're putting policies in place that will sustain that. So you'll be able to see it in just a few more days.
Well, we look forward to talking to you more as the session goes on. We'll have you back, and we'll continue with these updates. Thank you, as always, Premier, for making time.
You bet. Talk to you again.
All right. There's Premier Danielle Smith, our guest, to kick off a new season of the Alberta Update. Well, the teacher strike certainly top of mind to many people in Alberta right now. So many people impacted by it. Of course, the students mostly, but the parents, the teachers, and everybody that is connected to the system somehow. So let's go back to that and invite in the Education and Childcare Minister, Demetrios Nicolaitis, for further conversation. Good day, Minister.
Good day. Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Yeah, let's follow up on what the premier and I were talking about. I understand, if I've got this correct, that the ATA has presented a new offer. Both the ATA and the Alberta government returning to the bargaining table this week. Can you give us an update on the status of those talks? Maybe we'll start there.
Yeah, I can give you an update. I can't go into a lot of details, of course, because we are at the bargaining table and, we don't want to be bargaining in the media or talking too openly. But the ATA did provide us with a counter proposal and did come back to the bargaining table. So that was encouraging. The Employer Association, that's TIBA, and the Alberta Teachers Association met yesterday, October 14th, and had an opportunity to talk a little bit more about the counter proposal. And we're still evaluating that today. We're still taking a closer look. It seems like what they're asking for might not be possible from a government standpoint. There's a variety of different asks in there, but they total up to an additional $2 billion on top of the $2.6 billion that we already have on the table. So I don't know if it'll be possible for us to make that kind of an additional increase to teacher compensation and to the other areas that they're asking for. But we still have open lines of communication, and we're still looking for ways to find a path forward.
Minister, there has been a lot of talk about class sizes. There always has been, but in the last year, maybe two or three, it's been a huge issue. And a lot of that has to do with immigration and the amount of people coming to Alberta. And the Premier and I talked about that. But one of the things the ATA has suggested is that maybe there should be cap sizes. You have said, the Premier has said, that's not the comprehensive solution that we need. Tell us more about that issue.
Sure. Just to provide a little bit of context, you're absolutely right. Alberta has seen some unprecedented population increase over the past few years. And no surprise, that unprecedented growth has cascaded into our schools. We are seeing record numbers of new students enrolling at our schools, and they're also coming with increased complexity. We have had a 40% increase in the number of refugee students. We have significant increases in the number of students with English as an additional language. And we know that unchecked and irresponsible immigration policies by the federal Liberals are not just a problem for Alberta. I know Premier Eby in BC was talking about the challenges as well very recently. It's hitting all provinces. It's not responsible, and we're certainly feeling that pressure here in Alberta. All that being said, it's our responsibility to pull up our socks and get things done, which is why we've committed an $8.6 billion initiative to build and modernize 130 new classrooms. We're committed to hiring more teachers, more EAs to help get the job done. When it comes to class sizes, we don't want to be limited by hard numbers. We believe that giving our school divisions more flexibility and the government more flexibility to be able to manage unique circumstances is most appropriate, because a class size of 30 might be appropriate if there's no complexity in that classroom, but a class size of 20 where half of those students have a variety of different needs would of course be more challenging. So I think it's important that we take a more nuanced approach to deal with the specific issues that a school or a classroom has, so that we can give supports that the students need.
Good point, and I'm glad you touched on those things. The Premier mentioned them as well. I want to ask you about what we're doing during this time frame for parents and students. For those watching, what do they need to know that resources are available from you, from the government, as we work toward a solution with the teachers?
My biggest concern as Minister of Education and Childcare is making sure that students do not fall behind, and they're not adversely impacted. Of course, they are, and they will be adversely impacted by the strike. There's no two ways about it. But I did want to put some attention and energy towards efforts that could minimize the disruption as best as possible. So we've taken a number of steps. We've created a toolkit that parents can download and use to help guide additional learning at home. It's designed to pick up where students left off at the end of September. And parents can use the resources that are included in that toolkit to help provide some degree of learning. Of course, it's no substitute for in-person learning in schools. But I did feel and believe that it was appropriate and necessary to have something of that nature ready. We're also providing families with $150 per week for each child under the age of 12. That's available through the parent portal, which opened yesterday on October 14th. And payments will be distributed on October 31st. $150 for every child under the age of 12 is available for each week that the strike continues. As well, we're also providing additional supports to FSCD to support students with disabilities. We're also providing free admission to government historic sites and museums like Royal Tyrrell Museum's Head Smashed in Buffalo Jump and other pieces.
Hey, we have heard conflicting reports about the funding for that $30 a day parental support program. The president of the ATA, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason Schilling, suggested that new money that's new money being introduced into the system. However, I don't believe that is the case. Where is that funding coming from?
Yeah, you're right. And I heard NDP leader Adnan say the same thing, that, oh, all of a sudden the government's found this money to distribute $150 per student. It's not new money. And, to suggest that it is incorrect. Of course, every day that the teachers are on strike. They are not earning their salary. And that leaves unspent education grants sitting at school divisions. Now, yeah, I have heard similarly, well, reinvested into the school division or reinvested into education. These are one-time additional costs. They can't be reinvested on an ongoing basis because, again, every day that the strike continues, additional money is added into the pot. So the money for the parent program and these other initiatives that the government is supporting is a direct result of unspent and unused education dollars that would typically be provided to provide for teacher salaries.
Well, Minister, we all want to see those teachers back in the classroom sooner than later. Good luck to you and your bargaining team. Certainly to the teachers. We hope things get resolved quickly. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Minister of Education and Childcare, Dimitris Nikolaitis, with us on the Alberta Update. Well, one of the stories that maybe didn't get a lot of coverage when it was released is Statistics Canada and some of its recent numbers over the summer showing a significant improvement in Alberta with decreases in violent crime, in property crime, and in vehicle theft. Calgary seeing the largest improvement, falling below the national average in crime, which is a stark contrast to where Calgary was just 5 years ago, when Calgary was above the average. Deputy Premier and Minister of Public Safety, Mike Ellis, has been spearheading the work on this. He's played a key role, of course. He has always said police presence matters, and the government will empower police to do their jobs, to keep Alberta families and to keep Alberta communities safe. Here is Minister Ellis now with his thoughts on his mandate letter from the Premier.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Ellis, Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services for the province of Alberta. I'm very excited and honored to receive my new mandate letter from Premier Smith. I can tell you the work that we've done over the last several years has certainly yielded some extremely positive results. But I'm also excited about the new opportunities. We're obviously making sure that our new Sheriff's Police Service is going to provide a role within Alberta to augment and support all police services, to make sure communities, especially right here in rural Alberta, get the services that they need so that when somebody does call 911, we want to make sure that somebody is attending that call regardless of the uniform that they wear. And we're going to work with all police services in Alberta to make sure that that actually happens. We're also going to be looking at building a new DNA lab in the province of Alberta, and that's something that I'm really excited about, so that when cases and prosecutors need those DNA results, we'll be able to do that right here in Alberta. We also want to make sure that we provide the services to people who are lawful gun owners, because I can tell you right now, as somebody who's an experienced police officer, it's not lawful gun owners that commit crimes. And that's why we're going to be making sure that we secure our borders and continue to secure our borders, to make sure that we have the resources. And a warning to all those of you who are doing organized crime right now, we are not going to tolerate that here in Alberta. Something that I can tell you, we will locate you, we will find you, and we will put you in jail.
There is the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, Mike Ellis, and we will be sure to have the minister on an upcoming episode of the Alberta Update to talk more about what the province is doing for public safety in Alberta. So much underway. We're going to switch gears, though, now. Go to the Minister of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction, Dale Nally, who made I guess you could say a fun little announcement yesterday on the new license plates that our province will be using, and where you can go to cast your vote on the available choices. There is the minister. Good day, sir.
Good morning. How are you doing, Bruce?
Doing great, Minister. Listen, it's been more than 40 years, I think, since Alberta last changed its license plate. Why was now the right time to refresh? And tell me a little more about what you announced yesterday.
Well, first of all, let me just say that the current license plate has served us well for 40 years, but I think we can all agree it's time for a refresh. And so this is about a broader move to modernize and put a bit of a refresh on all those things that represent us. As you recall, we're coming out with a new driver's license. So coming up with a new license plate is going to be a great way for us to tell not just Albertans who we are, but the rest of the world who we are, and because it's our business card to the world. So we're quite excited about this announcement.
Hey, the new plates are based on a strong and free theme. I love
Yeah.
that. Why is that so important? Why are you running with that? And tell us more about the designs.
Well, a couple of reasons, Bruce. First of all, it's our provincial motto. It's right on our Alberta crest in Latin. It says "strong and free," and so the premier actually mentioned yesterday during our announcement she was surprised that it was never on the license plate earlier, since it has been our provincial motto. And not only that, it's not just our provincial motto. We think it accurately describes Albertans. Albertans are a proud, resilient, hardworking, entrepreneurial people that are unapologetically Albertan. And what a better way to tell people that than to say strong and free. So we think it's a great model to put on the plate. We've got 8 potential mock-ups. These are all obviously concepts, but we think there's some great ones there. You know, there's a couple of really popular ones: Moraine Lake, Mount Lougheed. There's also some that really pull out our cowboy heritage, as well as the importance of agriculture in this province. So there's lots to choose from. We've turned it into a tournament-style voting process. So there's going to be 4 rounds, and the first one is live. All 8 license plates are live right now, and we're encouraging Albertans, go to alberta.ca/pick-a-plate and choose your favorite plate and get behind it.
Okay. Anything more they need to know? You're watching right now. You're seeing the minister. You're seeing this for the first time. It's that simple. Go to the website, click on your favorite design, and then what? You weed some out and you go forward?
That's right. So the first week, we're going to have all 8 concepts live. And then next week, we're going to go down to 4. Then we're going to go down to just 2. And then mid-November, we're going to make an announcement, which was the winning license plate. And it will be the one that Albertans choose. And that's what we think is so exciting, that Albertans get a chance to participate in the process. They get to decide for themselves which plate they want. And so we're trying to make it fun with a tournament-style voting process.
Minister, feedback so far? I know it's pretty early.
It's pretty early, but I'm getting a lot of feedback from people that say, "Oh, we like Moraine Lake," and other people are saying, "No, I like the one with the wheat fields." It's having the desired effect, which is it's engaging Albertans, and people are not shy about getting behind their favorite one and letting everybody know which one they'd like to see win.
All right. Well, I won't ask you what your favorite is. I don't want you to bias what's happening. But listen, looking forward to the overall finished product and the result. Thanks for taking some time to chat with us about it, Minister.
Absolutely, and don't forget to vote.
There is the Minister of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction, Dale Nally, on the Alberta Update. Well, some more positive economic news to share. Rent has fallen across Alberta, certainly compared to last year, falling by 7.2% in Alberta, an 8.7% decline in Calgary, and a 3.1% decline in Edmonton. Now, there's a lot that goes into rents, as you can probably imagine, and housing, but our Minister of Assisted Living and Social Services, Jason Nixon, has been working hard to make sure that he and the government is doing everything it can to make sure that there are more homes built in Alberta. And he had this to say about his new mandate letter from the Premier.
Hi, I'm Jason Nixon, Alberta's Minister of Assisted Living and Social Services. Since the 23 election, our government has delivered real results for Albertans. We've opened navigation and support centers in Edmonton and Calgary, providing a one-stop shop for vulnerable Albertans to connect with critical supports and services. And we're getting shovels in the ground and roofs over Albertans' heads at record speeds. Alberta's leading the country in housing starts, and we're not slowing down anytime soon. This has led to rents coming down, and it means more families have safe, affordable places to call home. And we've launched Assisted Living Alberta, so Albertans can access care when and where they need it. With my new mandate, we're building on that momentum. We'll build stronger pathways to employment for Albertans with disabilities, and we'll enhance supports for families of children with complex needs. And we will work very closely with the Minister of Hospitals and Surgical Health Services to ensure patients who are no longer acute can get the care they need within the assisted living sector, freeing up hospital beds for those who need them. Through my Ministry of Assisted Living and Social Services, I'm very proud to be making life better for Albertans today and building a stronger Alberta for tomorrow.
There is the Minister of Assisted Living and Social Services, Jason Nixon. And we have one more very positive piece of economic news to share with you today. Last week, Statistics Canada released its job numbers for September, and it showed Alberta is, and to quote the chief economist, the Bank of Montreal, Douglas Porter, Alberta is in a league of its own with the single largest monthly increase in Alberta jobs on record outside of the pandemic. Alberta saw 42,000 jobs created in the month of September. BMO also projecting that Alberta will lead Canada in economic growth this year, showing that we are definitely a land of opportunity. Well, that does it for this edition of the Alberta Update, a first-hand look at what's happening in your province and with your government. You can find us on all of the socials, on YouTube and on Rumble. Please view and please share. We'll do these weekly once the legislature reconvenes. And a reminder, the speech from the throne is on Thursday, the 23rd of October. Thank you for being with us today, and we will see you again soon.